It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm Country Jim.
And our guest is Jody Cameron. Jody plays steel guitar with Jeff Woolsey, who we had on the program. I guess it was, 3 or 4 episodes ago, I guess.
And we had the former drummer.
We did.
Yesterday.
We did.
Or sometime.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome,
it's good
man.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. When did you start playing the steel?
Well, I started in 1980.
Okay.
And I was...
And before that, you played anything else?
Oh, I started piano lessons when I was real young, like 7 or 8. And then I played guitar all through high school and jazz bands and stuff. And then I picked up steel when I was 15.
Okay. Anybody that you knew that played that influenced you, or?
Yeah, my first teacher was a man that worked at the local music store down in Lake Jackson, Texas, Clyde's Music. His name was Jody Sanders, and he got me started.
So you play with Jeff right now?
Right.
Jeff
I play with
Woolsey?
Jeff Woolsey. I've been with Jeff for 8 years. That's the longest I've ever been with any band.
Great. Good deal. So now you play, of course, pedal steel.
Yes, sir. I play pedal steel.
I guess that's really the only thing everybody plays nowadays, right? Or is
pretty much. So there's been sort of a resurrection of the non-pedal steel in the last 10 years or so, but mostly in rock music.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about that. You had mentioned in what was it that Webb Pierce
54.
1954. Okay.
Was the first pedal steel record was Slowly.
And his name was?
The steel player's name was Bud Isaacs. He was the first one to put a pedal on.
Okay. You know, the steel is a fascinating instrument, I think. I remember when Caleb, his grandson, came over and he plays, and he was putting this thing together, and I'm thinking, man, that's a whole lot of...
Oh, it's a lot of trouble.
It's a whole lot of stuff.
It's as much a machine as it is anything.
Yeah.
I think you really need to be... If you're going to be a well-rounded steel player, you also have to be a pretty good mechanic.
Because you got to work on it.
You do.
You have to work on it.
It's a machine. Things are going to break, and they're going to break when you're out on the road and you're 400 miles from anywhere. And, and you can't get parts for them. You have to order them or make them. It's quite a chore.
What do you play? What brand do you play?
Well, I've got 3. I'm endorsed by MSA Steel Guitar Company, so that's my primary guitar that I use on all my sessions and stuff. And then I've got a 60s model Emmons push-pull that I use on some stuff. And
now, when you say push-pull, I don't...
Yeah, the Emmons push-pull was when the Emmons Steel Guitar Company came about in 1963. That was their design. It pushed to raise a pitch. It pushed to lower the pitch and pull to raise the pitch. So they call it the push-pull. Okay. Later on, they went to what they consider a more modern design, I guess. It's called the all-pull, and it pulls to raise and it pulls to lower. It's got a split finger mechanism on it. Without getting too technical, anyway, it's that's what I mean when I say push-pull. So I've got one of the early push-pulls, and then I've got a Showbud fingertip, which is also predates the all-pull. It was kind of approaching that. The fingertip was maybe one of the earliest all-pulls. Mm-hmm. It's a 66 model.
Okay.
My Emmons is a 64, and then my MSA is a 2018 modern with all the bells and whistles. So I got all the bases covered.
That is cool. Well, let's talk about your family a little bit. Mm-hmm. Your mom and daddy, where were you raised at? Right around here? Or?
I was raised in Angleton, Texas.
Okay.
Down in Brazoria County there, and
you still live there, right?
I do. I still live. I've lived there my whole life, except for that. About a 5-year stint when I was in Nashville mostly. But, my dad was a pilot. He was in World War II and in Korea, and then he had a crop dusting service and flew for Pan American Airlines. And then later on he had his own businesses, real estate and stuff. And Mom always worked with him in his businesses and I had a great childhood. They really supported me in my music, and they would, buy whatever I needed or wanted for my musical endeavors.
Yeah.
You mentioned my grandson, Jody, really has been a major influence with Caleb and helping him with the steel. I think Caleb went down there and spent a couple of days with Jody helping him and showing him And so I called Jody and I said, and you know, Jody's played a number of gigs with me, played steel on some of my gigs, and it's a special connection I have with him because there's not that many great musicians that, as my daughter Leslie would say, that will work as cheap as what I pay. But I called Jody and I said, well, so did you show Caleb some stuff? He said, yeah, I did. Said he even showed me a thing or two.
Oh yeah, Caleb has been one of the greatest pleasures in my career, is to see Caleb come up and play. You know,
It's so amazing because he was on one of our episodes, and then, and I don't remember how long ago that was, probably a couple of months, 3 months, maybe something like that. And then I heard him play. You actually posted something, Jamie had posted something with Caleb playing, and I'm going, now that's night and day almost, because, I mean, he was good when he was here, but it seems like he's a little bit more refined, a little bit more, just,
well,
I don't know.
I've never seen anybody come along that quick with going from ground zero to professional level playing. It was very gratifying.
The word I like to use, and I used to use this when I would listen to music when I was in radio, is I would listen to somebody's song and I would go, that's not very commercial, or that's commercial. Well, I would say that Caleb is very commercial. He's got a very commercial sound.
I would agree with that statement. Fully.
Very commercial sound, very polished.
Well, what I talk about sometimes is the fact, because I have children, all my children played. Two girls played fiddle, and my son played banjo and guitar. And then just about all my grandkids play. And I say that I've been playing about 60 years. And it took them at least 6 months to pass me up.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I've got a daughter that plays guitar now and drums, and she just reminds me so much of myself.
Yeah.
That I can't get her out of her room. She's homeschooled, and she would rather be in her room playing an instrument than doing anything. So
I've heard her play a number of times.
You got siblings that play?
I don't. I'm the only one in my family that. Well, I have both my sisters took piano lessons and played. One of them still plays, just at home for fun, But as far as my family goes, no one was a professional player. I did have an uncle on my dad's side that my dad told me that was during the Depression he would ride his mule to the beer joints and play guitar and sing, but I never knew him. So,
Yeah.
Well, as you began to play steel at 15, first band that you were in?
Yeah, the first band I was in was with a guy I grew up with. He's 2 years older than me. His name is Randy Pelt. He had a popular band around Houston back in the 80s and 90s. So we started that band together when I was 15. He was 17. That was my first band.
And then?
Oh, I played with Randy on and off. I mean, I still do. We still do reunion shows maybe once every few years. And then after that, I just went on to a lot of different local Houston area bands. And I played locally, up until 1995. At that point, I went on the road with Curb recording artist by the name of David Kirsch. He had Good Night Sweetheart went to #1 for him, and he had a couple of other top 10 hits. So I was with him for 5 years, and while I was with him, I met another one of my mentors, Bobby Flores, was playing fiddle in that band. And we toured, we did all 48 states and in Hawaii twice, most of them. And then in 98, we did the Reba McEntire and Brooks of Dunn tour. They had 80 shows that year, and we did all 80 shows with them. And then we did almost 200 on our own that year, too. So at that point, I was from 95 to 2000, I was mostly in Nashville. We had places there where we'd come in off the road. We'd stay there because we didn't have enough time to come home because we'd be going right back out in 3 days or something,
Yeah.
So, and then that brings us up to about 2000. And at that point, I just went back to playing with local bands for a while, and then I was with Zona Jones, who was a regional, had a regional hit on a song called "Goodnight Sweet." I'm not, that was David. He had "Two Hearts, One Love."
Okay,
and
yeah.
it was one hit there. But that generated enough work for about. I guess I was with Zona for about 3 years. Then I went to work for Bobby and his band, Bobby Flores, and I worked for him for about 5 years. Then I went to work for Jeff, and that brings us to now.
And when you talk about playing with local bands, Sloan's Country All Stars are.
Oh yeah, they're a big part of that. They're a big part
top
of that.
notch there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really good.
But
Seriously, though, it is top notch. Though.
yeah, Leslie said about she named my band Country All Stars. She said because she said, Dad, those players that you get are all stars. And then she said, I don't know how you get them to play for you as little as you pay. but
And she also had another good saying. Did you ride with him up here, by the way?
Pardon?
Did you ride with
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
She has another saying, and I'm going to go and lay this on you since you're riding with him. He's never been in an accident, but he has caused. And that is a direct quote from Leslie. When she was here, she was on the program, and we were talking. I don't know where we went with that, and I'm thinking, I rode with this man all the way over to Wallaceville Road.
yeah,
We went to the Buck
Sloan.
Sloan.
down Temporary.
Yeah,
Buckshot,
we went over there. So
Yeah, Jody's that's on our bucket list to me and him to go play that.
Yes, it is. In fact,
but-
what I was going to say, Jim, playing with you was really, honestly, one of the highlights of my whole career. And the reason is because you do the greatest material. You do the kind of material that steel players drool over.
he does the good stuff.
He does
the good Ray Price. I think even
the
throwing a few
shuffles.
Buck Owens and just that good
steel guitar.
good steel guitar and fiddle music. I love it.
Yeah.
That's the best in the West right there, buddy. Let me tell you.
But I was really trying to segue into another compliment on this guy.
Well, you go right ahead.
Because he wasn't just playing local gigs. I don't know of anybody, particularly on the steel guitar, that was used on more recording sessions. I mean, there have been weeks where he was in studio recording on other people's projects just every day. Have you ever kept up with?
No, Lloyd Green, the great steel player in Nashville, he's a meticulous record keeper. He's got all his black books, log books he calls them, going back to, the early 60s. And I don't have any of that. But as far as Houston goes, I've done a lot of sessions here in town.
Yeah,
Still do quite a few. And I do a lot now from home because I can, with the technology now, we can do that.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, we had Animal Turner on here, and he's doing a lot of that on guitar. Well, talk to me about classic country. Let's talk about 3 or 4 different things about it. Let's talk about how the kind of music you play with Jeff. When we had Jeff on, Jeff said that, maybe 98% of the gigs that he does are dance halls.
Right.
And that he just really doesn't have any interest in playing concerts.
Right.
But when you talk about classic country, the dance hall music, I call it shuffles and waltzes, it's a corner, it's a section of that genre. I've got a friend who's named after Waylon Jennings. And I went to see him, and he did 7 Waylon songs in a row, and they were all of that same type of structure musically. And there's no way he wouldn't even want to get booked in any of the dance halls.
Yeah.
Right.
That and so you've got rockabilly. I've got some other friends that do a lot of rockabilly. That's an entirely different category. Ray Benson, and one of my favorite steel players was Cindy Cashdollar.
Oh, right, non-pedal player.
Yeah, playing that Western swing stuff. Talk a little bit about your appetite for. You talked about the material that I do, which is mainly shuffles and waltzes. That's kind of your favorite thing to do? Or?
Well, yeah, it's mainly because the golden era of pedal steel was, I would say, from about 1960 through 1972. Or maybe 58 with Jimmy Day doing the Ray Price stuff. Yeah. But that's when, the producers in Nashville back then, they would let the steel player, the steel is a relatively young instrument. We've only had pedals since 54. So it was kind of they would let them explore and play to the instrument's full potential. But as time has gone on, I think it's gotten, for lack of a better term, watered down. The producers nowadays think a lot different than the producers did back then. I could take a single neck guitar with 2 pedals and 1 knee lever and do any session in this town.
Yeah.
But the standard setup is 8 pedals and at least 5 knee levers. And, back then when the knee levers were coming along and pedals were being developed, the players were allowed to really explore the full capability of the steel. Now it's just kind of been relegated to a different section of I'll get called a lot to. They'll say, just put some steel in there for flavor. We want a country feel to it. Don't want any fills. Don't want any.
In other words, they won't let you take a ride.
No solos.
Yeah, like they used to. I mean, the old Bucko and stuff, man, what was the guy's name that did steel for?
Tom Brumley.
Yeah, man, when he took a ride, I mean, when they did the ride, it was steel.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it was
solid
so
steel.
good, man. It's either that or Don Rich, one or the other. I mean, somebody was, really getting after it.
They really, sometimes maybe there's a point of view that views the really great players as being modern players, electric guitar and whatever. And those guys, those musicians on those sessions back in the 50s and 60s, that they were not nearly as great of players as what you would have in the currently. But I'm telling you, the signature licks that were created in those studios. There's a Charlie Pride waltz that I do that you played with me a lot. That kicks off with 2 minor, 3 minor, back to the 2 minor.
Yes.
and that kickoff is not in that song anywhere. Those chords are not in the vocals. And I've always wanted to find out, not only about that one specific song, but how the players in the studio, because a lot of times if you go to like one of Jeff's dances, and the dancers will recognize this, they don't have to be told what the song is, because when Jody starts kicking it off, he doesn't get 2 measures into the kickoff, but what the crowd knows what that song is, because there's a signature intro. And I just think there was great creativity.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I think the steel playing probably reached its pinnacle in that golden era that I spoke of. The really great players. There was a magical time, a short period of time where a few 5 to 8 great players, defined what steel guitar is supposed to be, and we haven't had that before or since.
No. As best memory will serve you, so it was. You would say it's Emmons and. Name about 5 of them.
My biggest influences, I think, would have to be Buddy Emmons first, and then Lloyd Green, great E9 player. Jimmy Day, he was did all the early Ray Price stuff. Dickie Overby, since you're familiar with him.
Sure.
And
the player from Big Spring that
Weldon Myrick,
Weldon.
another great big influence, and also there was a Hal Rugg, Curly Chalker,
yeah. Oh, the steel player that did so many of those Nashville sessions. I don't know that he did a whole lot although he did go play on the road with Jerry Lee Lewis, and his brother played bass.
Pete Drake.
And
his brother was it Larry or I can't remember. I don't remember his name, but yeah.
But the brother played with Texas Troubadours. Played bass for them.
Yes. Pete did probably more steel guitar sessions than anyone, other than maybe Lloyd Green and Paul Franklin. Of course, Paul Franklin came along much later.
Yeah. Well, tell me about. I think I told the story on the podcast that we did yesterday, so I'm not going to tell it 2 days in a row. but we did talk a little bit about where this music can go, where it's going. I would have to say that I'm not in any kind of a frame of mind that this music is going to have a resurrection and it's going to become the number one. I'm talking about the music of the dance halls, the shuffles and waltzes, or even the Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash corner of that music world. I'm more into if we can somehow preserve the music, keep it from just completely going away. Sometimes I'll go to. Well, I used to play at a club up near Waxahachie, and we would have 300 or 400 people there, and I would say at least 40% of them were under 40, and that was something I really enjoyed seeing, that many people still coming out and paying their money for the music. There's some places in Austin where young people still go. But like bluegrass, I've had a bluegrass band forever, and when you go to a bluegrass festival, I enjoy going to a bluegrass festival because nearly everybody there is my age. You want to say anything about all that?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's a danger of our music. And when I say our music, I'm talking about what you're talking about, the shuffles, the dance halls. Yeah. I don't think there's a danger of it completely going away, but I've noticed the same thing that you have over my career with Bobby Flores and Jeff Woolsey. Of course, it's a different story with the other artists from the '90s, but with those two bands, most of the people that come to our dances are between the ages of 50 on the young side and 70 on the high side, and most of that falls within probably people in their 60s, and well, we're all moving down the bench, as you say, Jim.
Yeah, we are.
And when they're gone, there are a few young people that come, and I don't think it'll ever completely die away because there are some young steel players coming along. There is a niche there.
Yeah. Young fiddle players.
Yeah, but I do think it's definitely on the wane.
Yeah.
Tracy Pitcox is a friend of mine, and I did a CD with Heart of Texas Records, and it's obvious that CD sales are another factor in this. How they waned. If I trot out CDs and I sell 3 or 4 of them, that's about as good as as I'm going to do. But I think Tracy at his shows is still having some decent crowds. But again, it tends to be an older crowd. And the bluegrass festivals, the people who are going to bluegrass festivals are people who were really into Haggard and Jones, and they go now. Those guys are gone. And they go to bluegrass festivals because now bluegrass artists are incorporating into their material songs from that from that era.
Yeah, like J.D. Crowe doing Merle tune.
Even Ricky Skaggs took some of his country stuff, and now when he performs it now, it's got more of a bluegrass flavor.
Right.
I was watching a show just the other day that he was on, and he was taking some of the country stuff from the 80s, and when he did it, of course, Uncle Pen was already had that bluegrass flavor to it.
Right.
But he took, I can't remember what, he had a few, Don't Get Above Your Raisin, I believe it was, and a few other ones that now it's definitely got a bluegrass flavor to it.
But before, he went to Nashville in the 80s.
He was bluegrass.
He was.
Him and Keith Whitley and so
Yeah.
many others played together, you know, so they were doing their thing together. Speaking of bluegrass, do you like bluegrass? Do you?
I do. I love bluegrass, but you know, I've never. I do.
This is the question I was going to ask, and maybe you were about to go there. But have you ever sat down and thought, well, you know, they ought to put a steel in a bluegrass band and just see where it goes?
Well,
know?
yeah, that's been done before.
It has. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crow actually used, I can't think of his name, but he used a steel player.
And not a dobro, but I mean a
Right.
you know,
regular pedal
regular
steel. Yeah.
pedal
Jimmy
steel,
Crawford was did that with. What was it? I don't remember. It might have been Jim and Jesse or somebody like that.
Jim and Jesse, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. Well, the deal with that was back. Now, this was back in the '60s. Even they couldn't find a banjo player or something, or their banjo player didn't show for the tour. So not Curly, but Jimmy would just do the banjo parts on the steel, which is incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
But he was another great player. But yeah, it's been done. Most bluegrass people that I've been associated with, if you ask them, hey, can I bring my pedal steel out? They tend to say no.
But I've used him a couple of 3-4 times at Red Brick Tavern playing dobro, so he does. He does
Okay,
have-
okay.
I don't consider myself a dobro player.
Right.
I consider myself a steel player that can play a few dobro licks.
Right. Well, it's just like also in a bluegrass band, there's typically no drums, right? Just an upright bass to kind of help keep everybody in check.
Right.
You know, that's pretty much it.
There's a bluegrass quote about drums.
Say it. I've heard it, but go ahead and say it because I'm trying to think how it goes now.
We don't need no stinking drums.
Okay. or I think it was I can't remember who said it, but something of maybe it was I can't remember how it goes now. Something about do you have drums in your band? He said little if any, or something like that. That was the and I can't remember who it was.
Grandpa Jones.
It may have been Grandpa Jones that
Yes,
said
yeah,
that.
I've heard
Okay.
that story, yeah.
But I hasten to add that a lot of your bluegrass people in the last 20 years who really cop an attitude about drums because they say it makes a noise, it does not give a note. It doesn't play notes, it makes noise. Yeah. Jody, we've talked before, we were listening on the way up here. There have been some steel guitar players that have really ventured out into all kinds of jazz and pop and mainly from the standpoint of instrumental side rather than backing up vocals.
Right.
How do you see about the use of a pedal steel guitar? And I've heard you play when you would play with me. A lot of times, the closing song we would do was a swing instrumental where you took a shuffle. And that was.
Don't believe I'll fall in love today.
Oh yeah, man! I absolutely love what you do with that.
Thank you.
So, as far as your interest in where to go with the music, you have any interest in that?
My interests have changed and still change. When I was first coming up, I learned both necks. There's, E9 and C6 tunings on a double neck steel. So I would get real interested in like traditional country, say, for a while, and just work on that and not ever touch my C6 neck. And then I would get real interested in C6 jazz instrumentals and early Buddy Emmons jazz stuff, and or Hal Rugg's jazz album, and I'd work on that for months. And then all of a sudden I'd go, hey man, this was in the 80s and 90s. I'd think, wow, that's so and so's new record has some pretty good steel on it. Learn and start working on that side of it. So, my interests have changed over the years, and they still change. Right now, I'm in a period where I'm studying early Hal Rugg and Weldon Myrick. And the way I got into that, there's a young steel player by the name of Silas Hamilton. And he's constantly putting stuff on social media of old Weldon Myrick and Hal Rugg stuff. And I got to thinking, I think I overlooked that while I was all into Buddy Emmons and Jimmy Day and Lloyd Green. They're all great, but I kind of overlooked the genius of those two players. So lately I've been going back and studying that. But, my personal interests changed like that. But as far as commercially, I do a lot of the modern music in sessions.
Yeah.
And so I have to stay up with what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, which is honestly not that hard to do. You can push the A and B pedal, and that's about all you need to do now.
So really, you'd rather be playing with Jeff, though, that's playing this hardcore country music.
Oh, absolutely. I love the golden era. 58 to 72 is my favorite era.
I think that was Hal Rugg on the Osborne Brothers recordings.
Yeah.
I love watching them on the old TV shows, Porter Wagner and Loretta Lynn and the Wilburn Brothers.
Wilburn, yeah. Wilburn had Hal Rugg was like their house steel player, and if it wasn't him, it was going to be Curly Chalker.
Yeah.
And if they absolutely couldn't get one of those two, Don Helms would come in. That was Hank Williams, original steel player.
Mm-hmm. We talked about Dickie Overby, and I had such wonderful conversations with him, and we talked about great steel players. And he said one time, when steel players talk about the great steel players, they'll talk about Emmons and Chalker, whoever. But he said, you don't really, they generally will not put Don Helms up in that category. But he said, I'll tell you one thing, if the singer sings a Hank Sr. song, you can listen for some of Don Helms' licks being played in that song.
Oh, absolutely. Don Helms played some of the most signature steel guitar licks I think that were ever recorded. I still use them.
Yeah.
And he didn't play a pedal, right?
No, he did not play pedal. He played an
thinking,
E13th tuning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Kind of a high tuning.
Mm-hmm.
So even in the last days, he didn't play pedal steel.
No, I think he could. I mean, I think he owned a pedal steel, But I know, for a while he did have a pedal steel, but he still sounded like him, even on his pedal steel. But I know that for a fact that in the later years he went back to his old guitar that he got in 1950. I don't know, 51 or 2, playing that very guitar, and that's what he wrote out on.
Man,
we used Herb Remington from here in Houston in a gig or two, and he played with Bob Wills from 47 to 51, and then went to L.A. and played with Tex Williams, and then came back here and played and he was just such a prince of a guy. And the first time we asked him about doing a gig, he made sure that we understood what he played, and he said, now, you need to understand, I don't play that E9 crying steel stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, he did not.
What tuning did he have?
A6.
A6.
Which was a lower version, kind of C6, and which is what is pretty standard now. But Herb, I loved Herb. He was a great guy. He called me one time for an E9 session. He said, "Can you come over here?" It was over in League City, I think, at studio over there. He said, "Can you please come over here and put some E9s on this? They're wanting E9s, and I just don't do that." And I'm thinking, Herb Remington's calling me to go do that. Well, yeah, it was good. He produced it.
Something we haven't talked about. Do you write?
I do not. Well, I do. I mean, I write instrumental melodies and stuff, but I do not write lyrics.
Okay.
Do you read music, and is it important for a steel player to read music?
I am very slow at reading the printed notes. I can do it, but it's very painful. but I would say no. It's probably not like Johnny Gimbel said. Do you read music? Not enough to hurt my playing. You know, I would say for a steel player, it's not necessary at all. But what you do really need is a good grasp of music theory, because that's what the steel guitar is all about. If you have a good knowledge of music theory, it makes life so much easier. You know, and you need to be able to read Nashville number chord charts, you know, things like that. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Well,
Jody, we sure do appreciate you being here, man.
Well, it's been my pleasure to be here. I just can't thank you guys enough for having me on. I told Jim on the way over here I've always either wanted to do a podcast or be on a podcast. So today I got to realize part of that.
We have fun.
It's great.
I mean, we have fun. You know, as you can see, we have fun. We go. We go in all kinds of different directions too.
Well, you know, I don't even listen to music in the car anymore. It's just podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people say. Yep.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, we'll sure let you know when it's going to be on, and if it maybe you could even put it on the Steel Guitar Forum. Can you do that?
Oh, I can. And there's some Facebook sites I can put it on too.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Good deal.
Awesome.
Jody Cameron, steel player.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.